Tere hommikust inimesed siin saalis, inimesed, kes vaatavad meid online'is. Juba sel kevadel on meil rõõm teist korda kutsuda teid ByteLife'i küberturbeüritusele. Täna oleme me fokuseeritud meie partner Obrela peale. Räägime teemal SOC, riskianalüütika, kuidas seda jälgida. Paljud räägivad SOC-ist, mõned teevad ja mõned teevad seda väga hästi. Selle tõttu on täna mul hea meel kutsuda lavale George Douglas ja Muhamed Mayet esitama Obrelat, rääkima lähemalt oma teenusest. Hey guys, stage is yours. Welcome.
Thank you. Hello everyone, and first of all, thank you for being here. Thank you ByteLife for making this event happen. So very briefly, my name is George Douglas. I'm the Chief of Strategy and Customer Success of Obrela. Obrela is a cybersecurity service provider. As a company, we were founded in 2010, and our sole focus ever since and going forward in the future is securing our customers' business, keeping our customers in business by offering a solution to their cybersecurity needs. Just to give you a glimpse of what we do and who we are, in 2010, when we started this journey, our concept was that we will be able to analyze data in order to prevent, to detect, and to respond to cybersecurity incidents in real time on behalf of our customers. We, after 15 years of doing exactly that, we have managed to have a customer base expanded to more than 20 countries, mostly focused in Europe and also the Middle East. We have a global team of approximately 300 people today. They are most of them are based in our resilience center, which is based in Athens, Greece. Also, we operate the second resilience center in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. In Dubai, we run the incident response and penetration testing team of our company. And also we operate 2 branch offices, one in Frankfurt and one in London. We ended up last year processing close to 15 petabytes of data, monitored more than 500,000 devices in our customers' environments, and triaged 1.6 million alerts and responded within a time frame of 12 minutes, more or less, to cybersecurity incidents. Those numbers, somebody could say that they're just some numbers, some statistics, but in reality, they tell a story. And the story they tell is that over the years, and this unfortunately hasn't changed even today, the trend that we see in the market, which is the cybersecurity market is heavily vendor-driven, hasn't changed so much. I'm in cybersecurity since 2001, and still it hasn't changed so much. The story in the market is buy the next magic box or the next magic security solution which will solve your problem. the next must-have technology. And what we ended up having as companies is an abundance of security solutions that effectively create an alert factory, produce too much data we cannot process and we cannot understand, and effectively we end up ignoring or losing the essence because we don't have the ability to analyze them. So what we do at Umbrella is, instead of focusing on offering just another product, just another technology, we focus on actually solving the problem. And the problem is somebody must find out of this 15 petabytes of data, the 1.6 million alerts, and end up triaging them and responding to true security incidents and taking the burden off our customers back. Because at the end of the day, and this is the topic of today's presentation, at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves, what is a SOC? What is a Security Operations Center? It's a very abstract concept, to be frank. What is Security Operations Center? Is it just a room with a bunch of people and a couple of screens and a CM engine and, okay, we have a SOC? No. It's, in its core, it's two things. It's the ability to scale and ingest an immense volume of data. It's the ability to have the know-how and the capability and to continuously build on that, of algorithms, use cases that will operationalize the data that you are collecting and analyzing, and the people and the processes that you follow in order to actually respond effectively and to become the extension of your customer's team in real time. This is how we perceive what a SOC is. And we have taken things one step further, which my colleague Mo will explain. We have now built a platform where we also expand from the traditional SOC services, which focus mostly or exclusively on the systems and on the data. Now, what we're trying to do is to bring the next element in the mix and combine this with information that is derived from functions in the organization, such as governance, such as risk, such as compliance, such as privacy, such as business continuity and resilience, and operationalize in the similar fashion that we're operationalizing the technical data coming from technologies, operationalize also data that are coming from people and the processes, to close the circle and to provide context in what we are responding to and what we're doing. I'm happy that we're one of the very few, if not the only, European company that has managed to be in Gartner's radar for 4 years in a row with regards to managed detection and response services. Most of the companies that are there are US-based, to be frank. So apart from us saying that we're doing a good job and we have a vision and the completeness of that, it's also Gartner which is acknowledging that on a consistent basis. Oops, sorry. Oh, yeah, it just happened on my screen. It's security, just the VPN popped up. You know, the security guys messing things up all the time. We have some strong partnerships with some key technology suppliers of ours, such as IBM and Microsoft. We're also part of an elite group of companies, part of Microsoft Intelligence Security Association. And we have also been one of the very first companies worldwide, which one of the 21st companies, I think, in the world that were accredited by CREST with regards to our penetration testing services initially, and then to our incident response as well as Security Operations Center services. Last slide, and I will pass the podium to Mo. An overview of our security portfolio looks something like that. It's one pillar, it's our managed detection and response services, or our MDR services, where effectively we provide the ability to monitor anything and everything our customers may have in their digital ecosystem, regardless of where this resides, whether it's on-premise, whether it's hosted data center, whether it's cloud, whether it's vessels traveling at sea, whether it's gas pipelines, or you name it, or medical equipment for that matter. We combine this with, of course, service level agreement, which includes everything that may be required in offering this service, including, of course, the 24/7 monitoring, threat hunting, the incident response, the blue team, which is on a consistent and constant basis throughout the service life, building and optimizing use cases. Because at the end of the day, as I said earlier, we're not alerting people of what the systems produce. We are detecting incidents and responding to validated incidents by humans. Our second pillar is the managed risk and control services. I won't elaborate too much on that because I know Mohammed will do that for me, which tries to put in the mix the people and the processes in the organization and all the governance, risk and compliance functions, but in the context of producing metadata in the everyday operation out of these functions, ensuring compliance with international laws and standards and regulations, as well as using this information bidirectionally in the SOC as well to produce meaningful context and information, and advisory services, which are complementary services that we provide to customers subject to their needs. Highlight out of those is the incident response and penetration testing services, but not only. Our motto is security over everything. And the reason we selected that is because this is exactly what we are doing. We're not offering a product. We're not offering a technology. We're not offering something that has very strict confines in what it does and what it doesn't. What we're offering is a solution, an SLA with our customers, and we undertake on behalf of them the responsibility to monitor the entire digital universe, the entire digital ecosystem, regardless of what it is and where it resides. This is what we do in a nutshell, and we try to put the risk element, the risk management, in the context that it is being understood by a CISO or by a CEO of a company in the mix versus mere threat management or responding to threats only, which is, let's say, the strict confines of a SOC operational team. Mo, I give the floor to you. Thank you very much for being here again. And anything you may require further, we can discuss in the Q&A section. Thanks, Mo.
Thank you so much, George, and thank you to the ByteLife team for inviting us to be here. I've had the good fortune of traveling extensively, but this is the first time I'm in Estonia, and you'll notice that I'm a little bit more dressed up than other people would be. I've spent quite a bit of time in Dubai, and the temperatures there at the moment are 35 up to 40, so it's a little bit different than here. But I'm sure everybody else is enjoying the weather. So thank you again for inviting us, and thank you to everybody for joining us. George went through a bit of an introduction, and thank you for that introduction, George. So I'll touch a little bit more in detail on some of the elements that George spoke about. Before we do that, I'm going to go into the cybersecurity landscape a little bit, talk to you a little bit about what we're seeing and where you can get a little bit more information about that as well, and how this could benefit you as you're building out your cybersecurity programs. We'll then go into our platform and how our platform can help you, as well as the different elements of service, which George highlighted when he was talking around the portfolio that we have. So to start off with, I think everybody in this room, as a cybersecurity practitioner, would see these elements as areas where there are big concerns right now. Right? The first one to start off with is on the phishing side. As much as there have been takedowns of organizations like Revo or the exposure of Lockbit recently. This continues to be a big issue, and it's been this way for a long time. And I don't personally see it going away at any point in future. So a big component that you're building out your security program to try and protect your organization against is making sure that your people are aware of this as a risk and how you can then protect them. Putting the security controls in place is one element of that, but it's part of a larger security program. Then you've also got scan and exploit attempts, and this is really scenarios where you're seeing an organization that has a public-facing asset, whether that's a domain or a specific server, and there's this gap between a 0-day being announced up to the point where you're able to get that patched. And this is what these attackers are exploiting. So this is that scan and exploit scenario that we're talking about there. And ideally, you want to get that time down as short as you can possibly, but there are scenarios where you're just not able to. So how do you put in place mitigating controls to be able to make sure that in the event that you've got a bit of a gap, you can still detect anything that may be coming in there? The next one, which is becoming more and more common, is supply chain related issues. So the compromise of third parties, because attackers are starting to realize that the real organizations that they want to target, they've put all the security controls in place. They've got their detection capability in place. So it's a lot more difficult to get into them. So how do we find a lower value target who maybe is not as mature security-wise, and then use those to leapfrog into your organization? So that's now an additional area. And this comes back to one of the key things that George highlighted. When we're talking about security over everything, right, we're not only talking around your digital assets and your IT infrastructure, but also any of your business contracts with other third parties. How do you make sure that you're governing those contracts in the right way? So we'll talk a little bit more about that as we proceed. And then the last element that you see there is on the OT or IoT side. So when you're looking at hospitals that have medical devices, maybe you've segmented your network, but these are now being more IP connected and again, presenting an additional attack surface. When you're looking at manufacturing environments, right, those manufacturing environments have been typically very off the grid, right? So they're not connected to IT, but that's changed over the last few years. Where there used to be this air gap before, you're now seeing increased interconnectivity between these environments because business wants to know in real time what's happening on the factory floor. And as a result of that, you've now got IP connectivity between these environments, which could potentially lead to one of two scenarios. Either an attacker realizes that the OT environment is not as well secured and can use that as an entry point and then leapfrog into the actual IT environment. Or vice versa, they can get into IT and then cross the air gap, which was there previously and is no longer existent, into the OT environment and then potentially hold that environment to ransom as well. So these are some of the areas that we're still seeing as quite prevalent and needing a lot of focus from a cybersecurity perspective in 2024. If you would like a little bit more information, we've just recently published our Digital Universe survey, which covers what we've seen over the last year. It's available on our website. I'll ask Kyrie just to share a link with all the people attending as well. One of the key benefits of this, George mentioned a little bit earlier, we've got more than 250 customers across 20 countries. So this information comes from what we're seeing across that digital landscape, right? And this is important because if you're looking at just what's happening in Estonia, right, your view of that threat landscape is limited to just that component of what you can see. It's not looking at a wider slide of the vertical and the types of attacks that are targeting those verticals. So if you have the opportunity, I would encourage you, please download the report. If you'd like a little bit more information, please give us a shout and we can go through it in more detail with you. But this is also, again, one element, right? The other element is what's happening on the regulatory and compliance side. A lot of the people in this room will be aware. When you're talking about the EU specifically, there's a lot of discussion around NIS2, right? NIS2, it's building on what was provided in NIS. It's expanding that requirement. It's also taking the categorization of entities, whether they're important or essential, and making that more specific. And as a result, more organizations are needing to put in place controls to be able to comply with these requirements. Then you've got on the financial services side, DORA, which is, again, increasing the requirements from a resilience perspective on those organizations. Right? These are all adding to your existing burdens as far as regulation controls needs to be taken into consideration. And then you've got PCI DSS, which was recently just updated as well. So if you're processing any sort of payment cards, right, then that's something that's going to apply to you. And again, it's become more stricter. They've expanded the number of controls. They've added in additional elements, which you now need to add into how you're making sure that your organization remains compliant and can continue to transact with payment cards. And then very importantly, like any other nation state, right, Estonia has its own set of regulations as well. So you've got the EITS, which was then updated in 2024. I don't have to tell you guys more about that. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with that. But these sorts of standards continuing to be updated, continuing to be changed to be more aligned with either international standards or to improve the overall standard in the state is something which your policies, processes need to be continually up to date with. Right? So how do we make sure we're able to track these? How do we make sure we're able to not stay out of date with just the current standards that we have in place? I mean, even if you're not specifically aligned with any regulatory standard or you don't have a requirement that's applicable to you, a lot of organizations, as an example, would use something like the US NIST cybersecurity framework that was also just recently updated. So making sure your policies and processes are aligned with these and keeping up to date is very important. So something that I've seen, and I've had the good fortune of working in the industry for, and a lot of you here are younger than me, more than 25 years at this point. It all comes down to basics, right? Is if you build a strategy, you put a policy, you put a process in place, you put your technical controls in place, and you make sure that you monitor them and you continuously improve on what you've got in place, then it's going to improve your overall maturity in any domain, cybersecurity especially. And that's what the principle is here. So to this end, what Umbrella set out to do is to build a platform where we can bring these two components together. That platform is what we call Swordfish, right? The primary goal behind Swordfish is aligning what organizations are doing on the security operations side. So when we're talking about a next generation SOC, yeah, you can have your SIM tool in place, you can have your EDR in place, you can bring in your NDR. All of these different components are giving you logs and telemetry of different elements of your environment and bringing all of these things up to an analyst who can then make a qualified judgment. Now, I'm going to pause here and just say very quickly, I'm not going to talk to you about AI and cybersecurity. Right? There's plenty of news around that today. I think I was reading an article. Yeah, the guys say if you attend the RSA conference in the US, which is actually happening, excuse me, which actually happened last week, the biggest thing that everybody is talking about is AI and how AI is going to be that cyber security bullet that's going to be able to solve all your problems. But to George's earlier point, it's another tool. Right, so you open up the toolbox and you can pick up a hammer and you can use it to drive a nail in, but you can't use that hammer to turn a screwdriver, right? In the same way, AI is just an additional tool to help you to organize what you're doing. You still need to have those fundamentals in place. Now, with Swordfish, what we're saying is, let's bring all of these together, because if you're not bringing the knowledge of your organization and your regulatory requirements together to your SOC team and the analysts that are doing things, they're going to receive an alert on a specific system which says, hey, it's a medium alert, you don't have to worry about it too much. But it turns out that that specific system is actually switching all the payment cards for your bank. That's a problem, right? That specific system is holding your patient data records for a hospital. That's a problem, right? So you need to be able to escalate those to deal with them at the appropriate level of severity, not just looking at it as an individual asset and the specific alert that has come in for that asset. And that's where Swordfish brings these two worlds together. So to do this, we then provide services like George mentioned. So you've got the MDR that does the 24/7 SOC component of it, but we align that with MRC manage risk and controls, which brings in your governance, risk, and compliance. So I'll talk a little bit more as we go through what the different service capabilities of these are and how these line up. And very importantly, to then help you establish that initial baseline, we do have advisory services as well. The platform itself is designed from the perspective of you use ERP tools to help improve the organization's efficiency in your day-to-day business. So what's the equivalent of ERP for cybersecurity? And there wasn't one, which is where George and the team put together what we see as Swordfish today. So you want to bring together PPT, your people, process, and technology, to the point where you're able to track cybersecurity more holistically, not just looking at individual elements which are coming in from your different tools, firewall log here, an IPS alert there. All of these different elements are providing one part of the picture. You still need to make sure that your people are aware of what's happening. You still need to make sure that you're complying with your regulation. Very often in a lot of organizations today, your CISO may only have responsibility for saying, hey, what is your ISMS? Let's build that set of policies and procedures and put that in place. So he's got this big stack of files on his desk, right? But nobody in the rest of the organization actually knows what they are and what they mean. Right? Maybe some of the IT guys do, right? But ask any of the senior managers and they're not aware of it. Right? Similarly, on the operation side, you've got a CISO who's more technical, so his primary focus is looking at the security operations. So he's got people that are monitoring the firewalls, he's got people that are distributing updates to the EDR tools, he's got people who are tracking any of the alerts that are coming in from the web application firewalls. Right? But it's not being brought together with what you're seeing across the other elements. So Swordfish tries to bring all this together, and it does this by making sure that the underlying component with which we provide these services is a singular data lake, which includes all of the elements related to the assets within your organization. Right? And this is key. Right? The example that I gave a little bit earlier, if a specific machine is affected by an alert, right, we want to make sure that we understand what the context of that alert is so that we can help you. Right? As Umbrella, as an organization, right, if I'm sitting in my SOC, I cannot know more about what your organization does and what's important to you than you do. Right? So by getting that information from you and populating that into the asset database, the digital universe, which makes up the foundation of the Swordfish platform, what we're able to now do is give the SOC team more context on how we can help you, how we can make sure we're addressing what's critical to you. Not just what the SIM tool says is important, not just what the EDR tool says is important. Now, this slide has a lot of information on it, right? But if you look at it from a technical perspective, you'll see that it's actually quite logical. So you're starting off down the bottom here, right? Where what you're doing is you're looking at the traditional SOC environment and you're saying, yeah, I've got my SIM tool, I've integrated my EDR into my SIM tool, I've put an NDR tool in place to look at my network components, and all of these elements are now going to start giving me information about what's happening in the environment. But we're populating this and correlating it with what we're seeing in that digital universe, so this unified data lake of the assets within your environment. Right? And we're now building all of these up and relating that to how it relates to risk in your organization, compliance, exposure, etc. And the fundamental components which make it up enable us to deliver this to multiple customers in a way that's scalable. Right? And the outputs that you're getting from this are going to be SOC services, providing 24/7 SOC capability to our customers, making sure that we provide blue team support. So not only is it level 1, level 2, with 24/7 eyes on glass, but also in the event that something needs to be escalated, the blue team is there to be able to assist you. They're also assisting proactively with things like threat hunting, right? They also do content development. And this comes back to one of the earlier points that I mentioned, right, is the benefit of working with an organization like Umbrella, where we have more than 250 customers across 20 countries, is because they're able to see a potential attack on a bank in the UK, as an example, What they're able to quickly do and see is, this type of attack has these TTPs. Let's make sure that we've built the correlation rules, we've built the analytics, we've updated the threat intelligence and populated that in the platform. So if a bank in Estonia is now affected by that same attack, we can detect that earlier, we can warn you earlier, and we can potentially mitigate it before it leads to any lasting impact in your environment. And then, of course, we do have the incident response team that supports them as well. So going beyond your SOC services into forensics, if needed, for specific capabilities within the environment as well. So that's the SOC component of it. But again, the same platform is what we're now using to deliver the MRC capability to bring your compliance and your policies into play as well. And with those, we're able to provide security orchestration, content management. And content management is arguably one of the biggest bugbears when it comes to GRC, right? It's taking all of those controls in the specific standards which you need and making sure you're documenting them. In a lot of organizations today, that's still being done via spreadsheet. Right? And now you've got to pass these spreadsheets around, you've got to send it across to somebody else. You look at those specific controls and then they send it back to you, but they haven't looked at the right ones, and then you've got to send it back again. So it becomes a little bit of a mission. And Swordfish is aiming to help you out on that side. And then, of course, risk hunting as well. So where threat hunting focuses on technical IOCs, which may show indications of a latent breach within your environment. Risk hunting is looking at this from a compliance perspective. And then we deliver these in different modules for the different applications. So not only do you get the next generation SOC, delivering you this capability on a 24/7 basis, but you have access to it using our CyberOps dashboard. The CyberOps dashboard is designed to show you what you need to know, so the KPIs of the SOC. Right? And we then built in direct native capability to integrate with Power BI. Right? So a little bit later on, I'll show you some other examples of it. And this comes back to a paradigm which I see quite frequently also. Because we've been working in cybersecurity for so long, right, we often say, hey, I need this report and it needs to come into my mailbox every week. And when we go and look at our Outlook, very often we've created a rule that takes those reports and puts them into a folder, and that's where most of the unread mails are going. Right? So we don't specifically look at those reports unless we specifically need to. Right? So what we're doing from a CyberOps capability is saying, okay, hey, here's the KPIs of how the SOC service is performing. Right? But you want something more specific? We've got full Power BI integration, and you can now build out the specific dashboards with the information that you need. And this can then be presented either on a screen in your SOC environment, on your CISO's second screen in his office, or it can just be covered as part of a regular service review with our customer success manager on an ongoing basis. Right? We then also have the exposure management component. Exposure management focuses on looking at potential vulnerabilities in your environment. And this is key, right? Is we don't do a full vulnerability management program. We know that all of you already have that in place. But what we feel is important, right, is when we're delivering SOC services, we know what we're ingesting from your environment. We don't want to forget that you have public-facing assets. Right? So exposure management on a quarterly basis, we will track any of your public-facing assets and let you know if there's something we think you may have missed, so that we can make sure that those are covered as well. And all of that is then processed with our SRM tool for service request management, which can also via API integrate with your own ticketing systems if needs be. So that covers the SOC component. So again, the SOC components in blue. And then in magenta, you've got your MRC applications, which now go into some of the compliance requirements as well. I'm not going to go into all of these now. I do have some slides to talk about those in a little bit more detail. But have a look at these and just think, if you're building your own security program, what would this mean if you had to build an equivalent platform in your environment today? Right? It's going to be quite challenging. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't know if we can ask questions. I'm wondering what value you are bringing with the business impact analysis for the companies. What's your benefit there? What you are doing?
So in most organizations, right, taking a specific requirement and trying to understand how that's going to affect you from a cybersecurity perspective, yes, you can do that in-house. But it's often better to get an external perspective primarily because people who spend 24/7 in cybersecurity across multiple organizations have a better view of what's happening globally and internationally, and we're able to bring that together. George, you want to add anything there?
As a principle, first of all, make sure it's clear. What Mohammed is presenting regarding the MRC applications, the managed control applications, those are application and service elements that can be provided also in isolation. So an organization may require only, for example, what you asked, to have a platform with which they can manage their cyber resilience, their business continuity, perform the business impact assessment, and so on and so forth. The idea that we are presenting here is that what we tend to do as organizations, as companies, what we tend to do is to process things in silos. So even in large organizations, we've seen that you have your audit function who doesn't speak with anybody else unless they are going to audit them, and then they report just to the board or the CEO, oh, those guys are not doing a good job, okay, and everybody's running. Typical scenario. You have your ISMS, which is typically handled by the CISO, but as Mo suggested, sometimes CISOs do not have even in reporting line authority over security operations, where the SOC functions falls under in a lot of cases. And so on and so forth. You have your DPO, which is handling the privacy stuff. And what we're trying to do here, in order not to create a very long answer, what we're trying to do here is give every stakeholder the tools to do their job the way they want to do it, and based on best practices. Okay, and if you want to continue to work in isolation from everybody else, continue to do so. I'm not going to tell you to change your way of working. But, and this is the big differentiation, but every single thing that every single individual stakeholder that's working in a silo is doing is producing data which are populating a unified data lake and are affecting the same business and technical assets that now produce meaningful information that, if analyzed, can provide context in the SOC team, and vice versa. When the SOC team identifies threats to specific assets, it's no longer a threat to a web server or a database server. Now it's a threat to your ERP, to your CRM, to your e-commerce platform. It's additional context as far as not only the threat coming from the attacker, but also taking into consideration the vulnerability, the compliance requirements, the regulatory requirements, the privacy requirements. So now, when you are reporting risk, you can start reporting risk in a language that is comprehensible by a CEO. Because a CEO does not understand vulnerability or threat, or he doesn't care. And if you take a technical person and put him in front of a CEO and tell him, yeah, we found a critical vulnerability. Critical vulnerability means what? How much money do I lose per second, per hour, per day? This is the next question a CEO asks. So now we're trying to to practically analyze information, analyze data, the same way we analyze data from systems, analyze data from people and processes, to provide every stakeholder the information they need at the level they can understand it and they can make good use of it. So a CEO understands risk in terms of legal, operational, reputation, financial risk, and in the case of healthcare or high-risk profession, even risk in terms of life loss, for example. This is the level of risk that they understand, and they need to understand it. And in order to understand it, they need to be fed information from all the cybersecurity functions that work in silo, including the SOC. So this is what we're trying to do here. Analyze the data, same as we have been doing for 15 years with analyzing data from systems. We're trying to also put additional context in the analysis and provide everybody with the picture they want.
Thank you, George. All good? Okay. So I think one of the other key things that I maybe didn't mention, which I should highlight, is we do take a modular approach, right? So we understand that different organizations may be at different maturity levels. So if you want to, start off with just the SOC component and do the MDR for that, absolutely no issues, we can cover that. If you want to start off with one of the compliance modules, we can do that as well. So it is a modular approach, but the idea is that we can help you end to end, and to the point that George mentioned a little bit earlier, the more visibility we have, the better we can help customers. Okay, and I won't go into too much detail on the next couple of slides, but just to highlight, right, if you're building your own capability, right, this is just what you would be looking at for the SOC component alone, right? So already, this is quite a significant investment into different tools and technologies which need to come into place, beyond which you still have to then add in the people component. You still have to add in the process component. And this is assuming that you're only looking at the IT estate. If you're going on to the OT estate, now you're looking at what are you doing across your Purdue model, right? Which again becomes more complex. And how do you bring all of this together into one platform when you've got a whole bunch of disparate tools underneath it? So as an example, on the OT side, maybe you're using a Dragos or Nozomi, or even if it's a basic Defender for IoT, right? As different solutions, you still need to bring that together with what you're doing on the IT side, right? Maybe you're using Corelight as an NDR tool. Maybe you're using Microsoft Defender or CrowdStrike as your EDR tool. Right? How do you bring all of this data together? And I'm not talking about just ingesting them into a SIM tool, right? But how do you bring it together to make business sense, like George was saying? The starting point is to establish a baseline, right? So in a lot of ways, from what I've seen so far, it looks like a lot of Estonian organizations are already ahead of some of your counterparts in Europe, in that you've already got the national standards which you're following, which is helping you to bring your organizations up to the right level of maturity. So you've got those policies and processes that you're putting into place. Now, from that perspective, we do offer advisory services where we can come in and validate what you already have in place, both from a risk perspective, but then also from a technical perspective, right? And this is one of the areas where we're quite proud of what our team have been able to achieve and what they do. So we've got dedicated teams who are able to assist with testing your environments beyond just your standard IT testing as well. They're able to assist with red team exercises. They're able to assist with doing specific testing on different types of appliances which you may have. So as an example, if you're talking about a hospital group and maybe you've got some medical devices that you're looking to purchase, so before you're purchasing them, you want to make sure that you're validating that they are you're able to deploy them with no vulnerabilities into your environment. So our team can run the tests on those appliances before you deploy them as well. Right? So those types of scenarios are things to consider when you're establishing that initial baseline. I did mention that we're quite proud of what our team has achieved. We highlighted at the start of the presentation as a part of the introduction that we are accredited by CREST for the testing that we do. And if you have a look, our team are quite well certified, so they'll be able to assist you with any type of testing that's needed. There's actually, I'll pause here for a quick story. George was actually mentioning this the other day, right? Our team were running a test on a specific hospital environment, and what they were able to do is to get to the point where they could get into the dialysis machines and potentially change the settings on dialysis machines. Now you can imagine what kind of impact that would have on a hospital organization if your ransomware got down to that point. So we're very proud of what our team have been able to achieve from a testing perspective, and we're able to assist organizations with running both technical testing, but then also on the advisory side, if we need to validate your current maturity levels, your current policies or processes, and how we can then help you manage them on an ongoing basis as well. So, yeah.
Small addition to what you just said. The important part is not that we're manipulating the dialysis machine. The important part is that this happened from a black box external pen testing exercise that was taking place with a guy that was sitting 4,000 kilometers away. So effectively, you murder a person while you are 4,000 kilometers away. This is the impact.
That's scary, right? And I mean, you always hear these stories, and I'm sure everybody here has watched these different documentaries, or even the shows like Black Mirror, and that where you see people doing some crazy things with cyber capability. The reality is not everything is connected, so you do need to test what you're putting into your environment. So coming back to the PPT portion of it, and specifically on the policy and process side, making sure that you're able to get that in place within your organization, and you're able to measure and monitor that on an ongoing basis. This is where we've put together the MRC component, which comes into Swordfish. Right? And what MRC is doing is it's bringing together the SecOps and the GRC from that underlying data lake, so we can now start monitoring what's happening in place and give you that single view across your environment. And as I mentioned, it is modular, so you'll see that we do have different options that you could look at and how you can use these within your organization. If the only thing you're worried about is the privacy component because you're worried about GDPR, then you can look at the privacy module. Right? If you're worried more about compliance, and whether it's ISO 27K or the local Estonian standard, right, then you can look at the compliance management module. Right? If you've got a large number of third parties that you need to manage and monitor on an ongoing basis, then you can look at the supply chain module. So each of these can be delivered individually, or you can use combinations of them to support your overall security program. And this is how it all fits together. So you've got the underlying Swordfish layer. Right? And what the Swordfish layer does is brings together all of these components we spoke about in the previous slides, and then enables us to provision these different modules for you. So you've got privacy looking at things like GDPR, you've got policy looking at your ISMS, things like ISO 27K, you've got your MRC risk, which helps you with your overall risk management, and then MRC compliance for compliance management, for supply chain, MRC supply, and then on the one of those which is a little bit different than some of the compliance standards is the exposure management component, which is specifically looking at the vulnerability status within your environment. And this comes back to one of those earlier threat vectors that I mentioned, is the scan and exploit type attacks. So using a module like this to help you track your vulnerability management over and above the tool that you may be using. Maybe you're using a Tenable, maybe you're using a Qualys, whichever tool it is, right? You still want to unify that view and make sure you're staying within compliance and within your vulnerability management program. And MRC exposure helps us to bring that together for you. You've got the cyber risk component and then the resilience component, risk looking primarily at the business impact, and then resilience looking at the incident management component of it as well. This just gives you a high-level view of some of the standards we cover across the different modules. So you can see which would be applicable to you and which modules you may want to look at for the different elements as well. And very importantly, this is, as I mentioned, a high-level view. We are able to put custom frameworks into the MRC tool as well, if that's a requirement that you have. Now, from a service capability perspective, I think one of the most important things that comes into play with MRC is the ability for us to orchestrate different actions across your environment, specifically related to your policies. Right? This could be making sure that we're collecting the information correctly from all of your individual entities. It could be making sure that we're tracking the findings against your policies or processes through different workflows within your organization, and making sure that those remediation steps are being put into place as well. The content management, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, is also very important. One of the most tedious and often procrastinated parts when it comes to frameworks is taking the frameworks and making sure that you're able to populate them into a tool so that you can then do the ongoing monitoring and measurement of your performance against those. So we take care of the content management part for you as well. And this is deployed within the tool set. And it gives you the benefit of not having to do a lot of duplicate work. What do I mean by that? Your national standard has a component which is based on, I believe it's around 80% of ISO 27K, right? So if you need to do an ISO 27K gap analysis and you've already done your national one and we've populated that within the framework, then you're already pretty much done with your ISO 27K, and there's just a small amount of work that you need to do to complete that. Right? So giving you those efficiencies as part of the content management is what MRC is looking at doing for you. Risk monitoring and hunting, again, looking beyond the technical threat hunting within your environment and looking at things that are going to affect your compliance is where this comes into play. And our team are able to assist you with this to look at how this is going to impact your overall organization's compliance as well. Right? Making sure that we understand what different activities may or may not contribute to your compliance status. Right? Whether this is something which is business as usual, or it's something which hasn't happened before and could potentially cause a problem. So we can highlight those, we can identify those, we can then help you to make sure that we're mitigating any of the concerns across those. Now, the modules that I mentioned a little bit earlier, they cover a few different elements. I won't go into these in detail. We'll share the data sheets and presentations with you guys later on as well. So these are the elements that we cover. So you've got the privacy component, which again, standards like GDPR, and we can then customize them for other elements. So similar to what I mentioned about ISO 27K, some of the other countries we work with, they have their own privacy standards based on GDPR. Right? So again, because we've got GDPR covered and the content managed within the environment, we can now help them to build on that as well. If you're taking a specific standard and building this into your ISMS and customizing this for your environment, same approach would apply. On the policy side, controls mapping for things like ISO 27K, we can cover. On the supply chain side, again, you're coming back to the threat vectors. Supply chain is still one of the most targeted elements, right? So making sure that you're creating those supply chain questionnaires for your third-party vendors that are being registered with your organization, making sure that you're able to confirm that they have the right security tools and standards in place. This can be tracked within the MRC tool as well. Sorry, I just want to go back here 1 second. I've often been on the receiving end of these because I've worked with companies like Umbrella and other vendors as well, where a customer will come to us and say, hey, you're providing us with these services, you need to complete this questionnaire. Right? And very often these questionnaires are Excel spreadsheets which have 300 lines in them. So it takes a lot of time. Right? Now, as much as it takes me time to complete them, I'm sure that it takes you more time to create them and then sit and track what the answers are for each of your suppliers as well. And your procurement teams aren't going to do this. Right? They're going to send it back to you. So this is where a tool like MRC can help you to make this process more efficient and standardize it across your third parties as well.
And one step further, which applies also to the other modules, is, okay, now you have identified that you have 2, 3, 5, 10 suppliers which have certain gaps and they need to mitigate those over time, and you agree certain actions. Who's tracking that in a consistent manner, and how do you keep on top of that? Typically, a CISO's office is understaffed. This is due to a number of reasons, but you literally don't have resources to spare just to do logistics support and monitoring of whether said XYZ vendor has completed the action that he told you 6 months ago that he would have completed by next summer or something like that. So just the grouping of actions, the tracking of this information, the automation of the notification and back and forth with the suppliers, and even more importantly, the automatic updating of your entire reporting structure with regards to your compliance regarding your data, because at the end of the day, this affects your data. It doesn't affect your system, it affects your data. This is done, let's say, in a seamless, semi-automated manner, saves a lot of resources. So the management element is, I think, even more attractive or appealing than the assessment part. The assessment part you do one way or another. The management is very resource intensive.
Thank you, George. And then we've got the compliance component, as I mentioned. So whether it's ISO 27K or other compliance requirements, we can track these in here and then help you to manage those as well across your environments. The exposure management, again, primarily focus on your vulnerability program and how you're managing vulnerabilities within your environment to make sure that you're keeping up to date. I've had a few customers that I've worked with in my career, and this continues to be, I think, one of the biggest challenges is you'll run your scan, right? And you get these thousands of results, which you then pass on to the IT team. And you say, hey, guys, you need to patch these urgently. You come back a month later and you've run another scan and they haven't gotten halfway through the first one, right? So using a tool like MRC to help you to manage this process, to prioritize this process, and to mitigate some of those risks within your environment becomes quite efficient and important for an organization from a cybersecurity perspective. From the risk perspective, again, one of the key things is understanding what your assets mean to your organization. And I can't understate this enough, right, is as a third party, right, we can monitor your organization. Any other managed service provider can say, hey, we're going to manage your environment, we're going to monitor your environment, and then we're going to help you with it. But they don't understand it as well as you do, right? So having a tool like this in place to help quantify what risk means for your assets and bring this back into what we're delivering on the SOC services side becomes key to making sure you're able to mitigate any risks before they can impact on your business. And then on the resilience side, covering not only the business impact we spoke about a little bit earlier, but very importantly, right, is what happens when something goes wrong, right? Whether this is as basic as putting an incident response plan in place, or it goes beyond that and putting in a full program to educate your people and your team around that, and then tracking that through the MRC tool as well. So those are some of the elements that we cover from an MRC perspective. But again, this is one component of it. So you've established your baseline, right? You've documented your policies, your processes, your regulatory and compliance requirements, and you're managing that through MRC. But from a technical perspective, you still want this next-gen SOC capability. This is the on-the-ground stuff that your team needs to do, right? The challenge that a lot of organizations face today is, where do I find people, right? Particularly if I want to run a SOC on a 24/7 basis, you're talking a minimum of 4 shifts, and you're looking at around 3 people a shift. You cover for vacations and holidays and that kind of stuff as well. Next thing is, once you've built this team, you're looking at 15 to 20 people just to start off with, right? And in a market which already has scarce resources, that becomes a challenge. Now, you look at this from the other perspective that, hey, okay, I can find the people, right? But let's say I'm a bank, right? All of these people are going to be monitoring my infrastructure, right, and my tools, and that's all that they're seeing, right? They don't have visibility of the larger threat landscape. Yeah, I can bring in threat intelligence feeds to augment some of what they have. I can make sure that they spend time educating themselves and understanding what's happening in the threat landscape, but they're not practically seeing the types of threats that are affecting other organizations in other geographies, right? In this specific region, you may face different types of threats which other regions don't face, right? But to a large degree, a cyber criminal is not going to target only a specific region, right? They take I like to call it a spray and pray or shotgun approach, right? They're going to try and hit as many targets as possible, and they're not limited by geographic boundaries, in the hope that they can at least get success in 2 or 3 cases, right? And as a result of this, those TTPs that they're going to be using, the modus operandi of these attackers, is going to be the same regardless of where they're attacking from and who they're attacking in which country. Now, the advantage of working with an organization like Umbrella, where we've got customers across more than 20 countries, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, is our team are seeing how these attackers are conducting those attacks, right? So when they now start seeing similar patterns of behavior in other customers' environments, they can take early action against it. And this is one of the benefits that you do get. The key thing is, again, we understand that you've made existing investments in your technologies, right? So let's see how we can help you leverage those technologies and bring them into our environments. Our team can then help you with doing the detection, investigation, response against it. Very important to highlight at this point, MDR means different thing to different people, right? If you talked to a lot of providers who have come from an endpoint background. They define MDR as being an EDR, plus we'll monitor your EDR or manage your EDR for you. You talk to a vendor that's come from a networking background, right? The networking vendors will say, hey, you know, all you need is the NDR tool because it tells you everything that's coming in and out, and we'll monitor that, and you don't have to worry about anything else, right? Yeah, go ahead.
I still have a question about the business impact.
Yes, please, go ahead.
You're talking about business impact analysis as a cybersecurity context, right?
Yeah.
I mean, in hospital, business impact analysis means a lot more than just cybersecurity. So we can't use your platform for business impact analysis for hospital processes. I can't. Maybe I can. But
So there's two components to this. So one is the service element, and certainly our team don't understand, you know, what business impact analysis is to a hospital. Absolutely. The other element of this is from a cybersecurity perspective, they do understand what it would mean, right? So they can contribute to your overall business impact analysis, but primarily from the cybersecurity side. So it would be a component of what you're doing as your full business impact analysis.
so we are still in a silos, as you
Yeah.
said.
Well,
Because cybersecurity impact analysis is
yeah.
done here, and I don't know, for electricity and water loss, and,
Yeah.
suppliers loss, and everything else is done in the other departments.
Yeah.
In the hospital.
So from a policy and process perspective, right, that's a slightly different scenario. So one of the things I mentioned, and I'll let George touch on this, is we can add custom modules, custom content into the MRC resilience module as an example, right? So if you say, you know, these are the things that you're tracking for your infrastructure, which are important for your business impact analysis, we can then help you build those controls, put that content into the tool set, and then monitor it. Now, obviously, those specific elements won't be correlated with what we're seeing across the IT estate for your security operations, but we could still measure and monitor those in that aspect of it. George?
So in very simple terms, we have to differentiate between what Umbrella is doing as a service and what are potential technical limitations of the platform. The platform, and the reason we call it a platform, is and not a tool or a tool is something you use as is. A platform is something that you tailor to customer requirements, and native within the platform is workflow engines, and also as part of the universe and the ontology, you can model anything that comes to mind. Literally anything, even attributes of assets and of technologies or of abstract concepts, and link them together. So you link together functions, organizational functions, you link together technical components, you link together high-level business assets. And this is how effectively you have the ability to respond to questions that you can ask the platform, and you can drill down and you can perform your risk hunting, which is questions like, okay, I want now to find, for example, out of all my business products that contain customer information or PII or whatever, the ones who have critical non-compliance finding and have active critical vulnerabilities and had security incidents for the last 7.5 months. You can be as specific as you want. You can get the results, you can filter them, you can analyze them, you can save them, you can keep them as a dashboard or as a recurring report. To be able to do that, it means that you have the ability to link information together in any way you want as part of the analytics module. Coming to the question regarding specifically the business continuity and the business impact assessment and all that, what we follow is specific standards, and what we model is specific standards pertaining to cybersecurity, because this is what we do, and all our services are related to cybersecurity. It's similar with risk, where, for example, for a bank, risk management means financial risk, means operations risk, means a bunch of risks which are totally unrelated to cybersecurity. We are not doing that, but we are not doing that as umbrella. It's not a technical limitation of a technology that you cannot do that. You can do that. You can model your potential business impact through any scenario that you want to model inside the platform. And then you can also use the workflow engine to customize the flows any way you want inside your organization. So it's not a technical limitation.
Do I correctly understand what you're saying is that basically that platform can be used for any kind of risk management that organization is basically that you are saying that this platform can be used for any kind of risk management that the organization is exposed to if you want to use it in this way as general risk management platform.
Yeah, I mean, it's at your discretion as a customer to do that. It's not something that we are doing or we are focusing on as a business service to provide the customers. We are very vertically focused on cybersecurity, but obviously, yes, you can create any kind of risk scenarios or threat scenarios or impact scenarios for business continuity purposes. You can model anything you want, really, and you can run any assessment that you want with any way you want. But the way we are focusing and the way we are using the information is for cybersecurity purpose. So, yeah, technical limitation of the platform versus the service we provide are two different things. It's not a technical limitation.
A slightly different example, and I'm not familiar with hospital standards, but maybe something similar. So if you think from an IT perspective, there are standards for data centers, right? TIA 942 or Uptime Institute standards, right? So if you take something like TIA 942, because it's an IEEE standard, right, we can take all of those controls, right? We can map them in MRC, right? And we can now start monitoring your compliance for those. And for a data center, what that means is, do you have redundancy on your power supply? Do you have redundancy on your HVAC systems? Do you have access control? So all of those components can be tracked and measured on an individual basis. They're not necessarily going to contribute to what the SOC team is monitoring, but they will contribute to your impact analysis that you're conducting against that specific standard. Does that make sense? Cool. So happy to have a further discussion on it. If you want to have a one-to-one session, please let us know. We can dig into that in a little bit more detail. Okay. So I'm going to come back to the MDR side, and again, from a definition perspective for us, MDR is again security over everything. Right? We don't want to only look at what's coming in from the endpoint or only what's coming in from the network. The more visibility we have, the better we can then help you monitor and manage security within your environment. Right? And that will mean that we bring in data from different sources, right? Regardless of whether it's OT, whether it's IT. Right? I think one of the things that looks a little bit odd on this slide is this one here, your vessels in the sea. Right? This is a use case which the team built out into the product specifically because we saw that we had customers saying, hey, hold on a second. Yeah, I've got IT systems and you can monitor those, but I've got ships and the ships also have OT components. So can you bring those together? So our team put together a bundle which said, hey, let's bring both of these elements together and monitor and manage them for you. Right? And this is, again, one of the advantages from an umbrella perspective is if we're working with organizations where there's a specific or unique requirement which requires different components to be put together, we do have a level of flexibility to bring that together and put together a package for organizations. George, I don't know if you want to add anything on the vessel side.
On the vessel side? Well, I don't know how much it makes sense to talk about vessels in Estonia. We decided to create that because we originally started from Greece, and we have one of the biggest fleets in the world. Something like half of the global fleet is 40% is from Greek ship owners, so it made sense to create packages for vessels. both from the IT side of things and OT side of things, because these particular guys have very unique requirements. They have very specific needs regarding connectivity. Satellite bandwidth is extremely expensive. Sometimes there is none available. We're talking in kilobits when we're talking about bandwidth. You cannot use a traditional CM platform, for example, take all the logs through this bandwidth. On the other hand, just a simple attack scenario such as a ransomware and delaying for 24 hours the loading of a vessel because everything is locked could mean hundreds of thousands of dollars because of the way this business works. Delays are in the hundreds of thousands. And on the OT side of things, it's something which I've been telling CISOs and IT managers of maritime companies that forget about the pirates wearing bandanas and having AK-47s and inflatable boats. They will have keyboards and pajamas. That's it from now on. And we have started seeing that because what you have effectively is a high-value target, which is the vessel and its cargo, and the ultimate environment, because of lack of maturity in most of the cases, of an easy attack surface, and then very easy ransom scenarios taking place. And most vessels, et cetera, are insured for millions, if not billions, if that may be the case. So automatically this means easy money. They are very much targeted for all those reasons.
Thank you, George. So the main reason I wanted George to just speak a little bit more about that is, again, just highlighting the flexibility from Umbrella's case is that if there's a unique use case where you need some assistance, let's talk about it and see how we can help you. The components, again, modular from an Umbrella perspective. So the elements that you see in blue, whether we're looking at your endpoints, whether we're looking at your network infrastructure, your data center infrastructure, OT infrastructure, we can choose which elements need to be monitored within your environment and then help you to build the SOC service and deliver that MDR to you for 24/7 capability in those different elements. And you can choose the ones that are appropriate. But very importantly, the service capabilities become important in how we deliver those services to you. And I've got a few more slides talking a little bit about those service capabilities, so I'll dig into those. Just the modular elements as you see them. So you've got MDR core, which focuses on the endpoint component. You've got MDR infra now starting to go into your data center, your network infrastructure, all the rest of it. If you're using cloud components, we can do that. And between these, we can look at a hybrid approach as well. So we can combine elements if you need. We have some customers who have a lot of infrastructure in a specific cloud tenant, which they want to monitor, but at the same time, they need to correlate that information with on-premise infrastructure also. So we're able to bring that together as a hybrid offering to customers. MDR OT and MDR vessels we spoke about. And then very importantly, you'll see MDR brand at the end there. We feel that your external attack surface is very important to monitor as well, whether this is the identity of the organization or it is just your digital assets, your domains, etc., which are external facing. Attackers use these for recon when they're trying to access your environments. They use them for setting up infrastructure for things like the phishing, which we mentioned in the threat vector slide as well. So we want to make sure that we're trying to cover you from those angles also, so we bring those together. And then very importantly, down the bottom, you'll see it's still all delivered over the Swordfish platform. Like MRC, bringing all of that together within that single unifying platform to deliver those end-to-end services to you. SOC as a service delivered 24/7. George mentioned in his introduction that we do have the primary resilience operations center, our SOC team based out of Athens. That's the team that delivers for Greece. We do have a dedicated team in the Middle East focusing on the Middle East regions. And then we've got a separate team also focused on incident response capabilities as well. So those teams are what make up the bulk of our delivery capability. When we spoke at the start, we said, we've got around 300 people that are employed by Umbrella right now. Around 70% of those are all on the technical side. So the organization is very heavily focused on making sure we have the right people in place. And very important to highlight this point, when George had the stats slide up, one of those stats was around our response time, and the number there was 12 minutes. Right? So for high and critical incidents, from the point that we received the alert up to the point that our team have concluded that initial triage, they've built an incident case and then contacted you as the customer, that's 12 minutes. Right? So our critical SLA is 30 minutes. Our high SLA is 1 hour. But for 2023, that average was 12 minutes. So that shows you from a capability and capacity perspective that we're investing in our people to make sure that they're able to triage quickly, they have the skills to be able to identify and figure out the types of attacks which are affecting our customers, and they're able to take action and help customers with that. We build a set of rules of engagement with customers, which help us to define where we can then help you to take actions within your environments. So you may say, hey, in this specific environment, call it a hospital, on these specific machines, we don't want you to do anything without speaking to us first. Absolutely got it. On those machines, no problem. If you see something strange, go ahead and isolate it or block the network access. We can do that. We can create the playbooks according to those. Those rules of engagement are defined in combination with you as the customer. What our team then do is beyond the 24/7 monitoring, our blue team is able to assist with any escalations. Right? They also take a proactive approach where they're saying, hey, I don't only want to know what may have happened. Let me run some threat hunting across your environment. Let me build content to detect things a little bit earlier in the attack cycle as well. They make sure that that content is aligned with standards like MITRE. So we call this hardcore content, which goes into our platform. We're talking thousands of correlation rules and use cases. Right? If you've managed the SIM for any duration of time, you'll know one of the biggest issues is making sure that your correlation rules and your use cases stay up to date. Yeah, I mean, you can bring in a Stix or Taxi feed for threat intelligence. You can subscribe to some commercial feeds, but making sure that you're getting alerts which you can actually take action on is dependent on those rules and use cases that you're putting in place, those detections that you're putting in place. Right? And to make sure that those stay up to date, that's one of the tasks that the blue team takes care of. So when we onboard a customer into our MDR service, immediately off the bat, that content pack is deployed into their tenant within our environment. Right? And that helps us immediately start giving benefit to those customers. I mentioned the threat hunting on the previous slide. So this is conducted by our blue team, and they take a systematic and a mission-based approach when they're conducting these threat hunts within organizations. They build the playbooks for these threat hunts based on what they're seeing from the threat landscape. So when they're conducting these threat hunts, right, again, you're getting the value of Umbrella having multiple customers across multiple countries and what they've been able to see across those. So those playbooks that they put together give us a much wider view of something that may or potentially have occurred within your environment as well. And then, of course, they're supported by the incident response team, where you need more dedicated, focused incident response. Maybe it's an APT or nation-state type attack, which requires deeper levels of technical skills. So our incident response team can jump in and assist there as well. I apologize if I'm going a little bit fast. I'm just looking at the time. I know I'm a little bit over. I hope that's okay. The other component which does become a little bit of a concern for most customers who are operating their own environments is maintaining and managing their SOC platform. Right? That SOC platform will include multiple tools, maybe a SIM tool, an EDR, an NDR, a cloud access broker, some DRP solutions. So maintaining and managing those tools to make sure that they continue to stay up to date, that you've got storage capacity, you've got processing capacity, all of that requires additional admin and skills. And again, if cybersecurity skills are a little bit niche, skills on specific tool sets are even more niche. Right? Trying to find somebody who's a curator expert and hang on to that person from a retention perspective may be a little bit challenging. Trying to find somebody who's a Microsoft Sentinel expert, maybe you can find a few more of those, but a deeper technical level expert is often difficult to hang on to. So from Umbrella's perspective, we would take care of this component of managing the platform as well. So you don't have to worry about keeping those in-house. If you have a requirement, so as an example, we work with a number of customers where they're running Azure across the entire environment, right? And as a part of this, maybe they've got Microsoft Sentinel and Microsoft Defender deployed. They're using E5 licenses, so they've got the full Defender P2 across their environments. For us, what we're able to do is through Azure Lighthouse, help them to manage this environment, help them to populate the content in this environment, and then deliver the services on top of that. So making it a much easier lift for them to run their security operations as well. And then, very importantly, customer service management. One of the biggest challenges when it comes to running cybersecurity within an organization, and even if you're working with some support from a third party, is making sure that you're able to convey to your executives, so beyond the CISO, what cybersecurity actually means and how it's impacting your environment. So the customer success manager, which we provide as a part of the service we offer to customers, is a person who's spent an extensive amount of time as a program manager for cybersecurity, has experience in running cybersecurity operations for customers, right? And what they're able to do is to work with you to understand what the KPIs of your cybersecurity program are, right? Are we meeting them? Are we able to assist you in improving them, and what this means to your business? I mentioned a little bit earlier that we've got standardized dashboards built in to provide you with the information that you need at an executive level about how your service is performing. But one of the things that customer success managers do is they then help you to say, hey, actually, I need to represent this information in a different way to our management team. Right? So using a tool like Power BI, they can then help you craft those specific dashboards. So I've got a couple of examples here of some of the dashboards that you might see, depending on what you're looking for. Right. So in this example here, you're looking at pipeline reporting and response times for a specific time period. So you can see the number of alerts that have come in. You can see how many of them were triaged, how many cases were created from them, what the overall SLA performance was. Right. So now you can say, hey, actually, why are you guys over here? Right. Or how many alerts have come in compared to the previous month? Why is it down so much? Is there a device that is not reporting? Right, so all these sorts of elements are things that customer success management can help you with. Right? And the types of dashboards or the information which is presented is something that the team can then help you to identify, which of these elements are required for your business, how many of them are relevant to your organization. So actually, I'm only working in Estonia. I don't need something like this. Leave it out. No problem. Right? So the guys can help you to create and craft the dashboards which are required for you to provide management updates to your team as well. And I think before I finish off here, and again, I apologize for being a little bit over time, one of the key things I want to highlight from an umbrella perspective is, again, for us, we want to make sure that we're looking at your cybersecurity holistically. Right? So end to end, we want to say, hey, let's see how we can help you to improve your overall security posture, not only from a security operations perspective, but from a GRC perspective as well. Right? Let's help you establish those baselines. Let's help you build your overall security program and then improve that security program over time. I'll ask George to just mention here very quickly. George, just in terms of customers, I know some of our customers have been with us for a very long period of time. Would you mind giving a couple of examples?
Well, sure. I mean, customer retention and customer success with us and being with the customers for a very long time is key. So one of the first customers that we onboarded in the service, as I told you, we started in 2010. In 2011, we onboarded the Athens Stock Exchange, for example. They are a customer with us in 2024. Many other customers like telcos. We have some customers since 2012, onboarded back then and still being with us today. So apart from demonstrating, customer, let's say, loyalty or customer retention, this also demonstrates the ability that we have as part of the service to adapt, because nobody would expect that a telco, for example, in 2012 would have the same systems that they have in 2024. Just the telco systems have changed by 3 generations almost. The thing that the customers value mostly in the service, and I will say it in very, very plain words, and if it's something that you can keep from this presentation, keep this. As I said in the intro, everybody has created alert factories in their environment because of the number of systems that are producing alerts. We will never produce alerts and send them to our customers without them having been humanly validated security incidents. And if you go back a few slides, just go back in the dashboards, just to highlight on that, because this is, I think, one of the most important things. Further back. One more, here. So what you'll see on the top left is that technology, our technology, not the customer's technologies, our technology, after analyzing hundreds of thousands of alerts produced natively by our customer systems, came up with 18,000 alerts that our security analysts had to go through. So the 18,000 in the last 6 months is already a number which technology helped us to streamline. And then the analysts decided that out of these 18,000 alerts that were produced, 862 cases, if you see on the right, so that those are incident cases, were created, were communicated to the end customer, and were handled either by technical means or, directly by us, or by escalating to the customers and them taking actions, or both. So when we are talking about a service level agreement, and when I presented the 12 minutes in the beginning, and when Mo mentioned that earlier on, what we mean is that from the second this alert arrives until the time an incident case, which has been triaged, has been human validated, and somebody with his own hands in human language explains, this is what's happening, this is the actions I'm taking, this is the actions you should be taking as a customer, this is the 12 minutes. And I emphasize on that because I do not believe there is a service level agreement right now in the market globally which achieves these numbers and can prove that. We've seen SLAs in the market where they can promise any number you want, because effectively the clock starts ticking, not by the second the alert happens or the incident happens, but from the time the analyst acknowledges the alert. What does that mean? It could take 3 days, and then they acknowledge the alert, and then, yeah, okay, you can do it in 10 minutes, in 15 minutes, in any time you want. But the critical time is between the incident happening and the actual acknowledgement of the alert. And a lot of companies exclude that. The SLAs, it's a very tricky business in the cybersecurity world, I can tell you that. And in your selection process, please pay attention. Deal with SLAs which are transparent. Companies which give you all the information that you may require and you may ask. Visibility on how things work and anything you may require regarding how things are being run. This is how we do it.
Thank you, George. So, yes, I'll add in, we've had the good fortune with our partner ByteLife to work with a number of customers in the region. And we've gotten to the point with them where a few of them will be coming across to visit our SOC in Athens. So we would like to work with the rest of you and hopefully get you guys across. These are just some pictures of the SOC in Athens. So it would be good if we could get visitors to come in and have a look and see what our team are doing and how we operate. It's by no means a small operation. and we look forward to working with you. So I'm going to stop here. I know we're over time, and I apologize for that, but we're here. So any questions, please feel free, let us know.
Thank you, Mo. Do we have any questions? Yeah, please.
Thank you for explaining
Douglas, would you like to come?
your approach and the platform as well. And I fully agree that in order the MDR or SOC to be efficient, you need to understand the context as well, where everything is happening. So I have actually a few questions related to that. One is that what is your experience in order to establish the baseline for the context, depending on the company size? How long it takes to understand the context of business processes, supply chain, organization, and all that in order to start the service?
So it's going to vary from organization to organization, and there's a few different reasons, right? So one is, in some cases, organizations we work with don't have any policies or processes in place as yet, right? So you're literally starting from scratch. So our team help them to identify what policies and processes need to be put in place, and then help them to build them, help them to implement them. And then we actually start the process of building out the security operations and MRC services for them. In other scenarios, you've got customers who have policies and procedures, but the ISMS is literally a copy-paste of a standard, right? So it's going to vary. If you've got a mature organization, we could onboard MDR services, so just the SOC component, in anything between 2 to 6 weeks, right? Of course, taking into consideration any of their change management requirements, etc. as well. If you're looking at the MRC component of this, if it's standardized processes, then again, quick start. Within a couple of weeks, we can get started with them and start monitoring those environments. Depending on the complexity level, that may increase. So it is going to vary. George, I don't know if you want to add anything there.
Yeah, I mean, the timeframes are as you suggested. What I want to comment on is what we're trying to achieve is change a little bit the mindset. So we're trying to create a mindset shift in how we're doing things. So the way I believe that you should be looking at things are, where do I want to be 3 years from now? Okay? And also, where am I today? And at different levels of your security programs and security silos within your organizations, we will have different maturities. So what we do always, I mean, we cannot do miracles. What we can do is we can start in all domains, and we can achieve all the quick wins. As Mohammed said, the easiest part is onboard, for example, systems in the MDR service. 4, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, depending on how fast our customers are about doing that. But if we're talking about now establishing an ISMS from scratch, okay, building the policies is one thing, building the process is another thing. Training the people to follow them is a totally different chapter. Improving upon that, forget about it. So this is something that, yes, you are building today, but you have to have an horizon of 3 years of where do I want to be in 3 years' time from now? What level of maturity do I want to achieve? How do I want to invest in it? And no matter what we do as Umbrella or whatever any company out there promises, there is a lot of work, especially in the governance world, that will have to happen from within the organization. There are no magic tricks in that front. We can provide the tools, we can provide the best practices, we can help you the best we can, but at the end of the day, you have to apply things in practice. We can help assess the situation. We can help you orchestrate things. We can help you train your people. We can help you to track and take all the logistical overhead of tracking activities and suggesting the best way to apply them in practice. But somebody has to apply things in the real world in practice. And this is the work that has to happen from within, from all the people involved. The good thing is that utilizing the platform, now you can distribute tasks. It's not a one-man show. So we don't believe in a CISO, who's as the police officer, which is running after everybody inside the organization. We don't believe in the concept of having 50 CISOs to run after 50 people in the organization. It has their own CISO and their own police officer running after them. No, it doesn't work like that. It's a distributed effort. It takes a mindset shift and it takes time. Not from a technical perspective, from a people mentality perspective.
Yeah, thank you. I fully agree. Another question related to that is that when you establish the baseline, it's just the one snapshot of an organization at that moment. The picture changes all the time.
Yeah.
There are separate systems for asset management, for processes, for storing documents with all the metadata for the supply chain and so forth. So how do you keep that in track? Do you have like integrations with the bigger platforms for that, or how that works?
So depending on again, the maturity and what each organization has, yes, there are technical capabilities to integrate with individual platforms and keep information up to date. As far as how you can kickstart things, sometimes depending on what the organization has done themselves, things can be kickstarted in a very fast way. For example, if you are using, Azure Active Directory, okay? And you have created your org structure and roles and responsibilities, etc., in the Azure Active Directory. So this is one of the cases, for example, where we just integrate with your Azure AD. Your org structure is automatically inherited in the platform. The workflows magically start working because they are there already and they work on a role-based model and zero maintenance or zero integration or zero implementation. Of course, then you may require to tailor them, to add steps, to remove steps, to create different flows. Okay, this is part of the customization process, but as far as how fast can we be onboarded, for example, if you are in an Azure AD environment already, very fast. Depending on how you've built it, right? Otherwise, yes, there are capabilities to import from either modeling tools or manually or through CSV files or through APIs. Or the integration capability is there. We can do that. The important part is to decide which of those sources are truly authoritative sources, are truly sources that are the unique source of truth for this particular information. Because if I were in your position, we very much prefer to do everything manually than to import garbage from a system that I know that has garbage in it. And maybe decide to do a reverse integration, do things manually and then clean the other system by integrating it in a reverse way. In any way, what you want to do is to have meaningful information in your platform. And what we have the ability to do is we have the ability to take a little bit of the manual overhead of populating things and modeling things through the process of running, for example, and executing compliance assessments, data privacy impact assessments, building records of processing activity in your privacy modules. All that is generating information. It's generating processes. It's generating function entities. It's generating types of information that now are populating what we are calling the universe. And now these ontological elements that you have built without actually going there and building them, they have built themselves. Now you can actually use them and quote unquote tag other elements or link with other elements. And this is where you create relationships without doing too much manual labor and too much work.
Okay. Do we have more questions? Okay. I'm super happy that ByteLife has such professional partners. So thank you, George,
Thank you for having us here, and we are very, very happy to work with you in the region. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you, Mo. Siit pealt lähme edasi eesti keele üle. Maybe you can say it. Edasi esineb meile Uko Valterberg, kes räägib sellest, et miks SOC on hea lahendus, mille peale mõelda, mida selle juures kaaluda, millised on ohud, murekohad. Nii et Uko, lava on sinu.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tere. Sadly, when I realized that I had to do a presentation here, I did my slides yesterday evening. Doesn't matter in that sense, I can speak about the topic anyhow in Estonian and English, but sadly those are in Estonian. So, so why me? Why I'm talking about that? Maybe there's one reason that I have been in this field roughly, I would say 20 years, more or less. Started with different kind of, used to be called CompuSec. Like back many years ago, it wasn't, there was no InfoSec or wasn't really actually a cybersecurity, it was CompuSec. So started that when I was in the military, and from there on I kind of developed over the years and ended up in private sector now, more or less, Estonian Energy. So being a group CISO in Estonian Energy and also running a small CISO side hustle on a smaller company called Nortal AS, which is one of the biggest Estonian software developers. Different companies, completely different approach, completely different view on securities, completely different needs for security. And it's a good way to ask, or for me to ask that question, SOC or no SOC, because companies have different needs, different requirements, different compliance needs. So, definition and main goal. In essence, what SOC is, and I define it by cyberspace, because I'm not talking about information security assets, yada, 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 all that stuff. Cyberspace, all attacks that come from the internet side. So SOC, usually in essence, is responsible to defend against all incidents, events that come from the internet side. Me being an information security manager or CISO means that I'm not just responsible for a SOC operation, I'm responsible for all security operations that can end up and will end up in one or another way in information space. And information space is not digital, it's also physical. So lockers, safes, all that stuff. But in that case, SOC is mostly responsible for cyberspace and the operations from there. Main goals, of course. Monitoring. The most important thing for a SOC is situational awareness. Situational awareness can be handled only if you know exactly what you have, what assets you have. Asset management is quite important. One of the most important things actually is to know what you have. And then you can do priorities. What do you have to defend? Because if you have a very big company, for example, like Estonian Energy, group-wise it's really huge in that sense. We have several subsidiaries, about 8 or 7 or even more if you count all the smaller ones. Then you have to know what are the crown jewels, the golden eggs you need to protect, because you cannot protect all of them. So only that can be done if you know exactly what you have. And for that, you have to build up the monitoring capability where all the important stuff is visible and you can monitor those. For that, you can use different vendor products. I know CM solutions, everybody knows SonarQube, Splunk, there's like so many. Also, you have to monitor network, NDR solutions. There's also many of those. ByteLife probably sells some of them or provides those. EDR solutions, also countless amount of different solutions you can buy. One promises to be the better, the best, the most best, or however you call them. And the WebAR or behavioral analytics, also lots of solutions in the market integrated into EDR and so on and so forth. So lots of solutions. Reaction and handling incidents. So if incident comes in, you have the CM solution, whoever provides that. You have your NDR, your XDR solution. You get the picture. you have to react to that. So in the SOC case, depends really how your SOC is operating in that sense. In most cases, means that SOC is either a monitoring capability, not an action capability. So you have to have the separation of duties in case of SOC. So it's preferred. So SOC cannot kill the business process, and business process is not responsible for monitoring incidents. Either then can hide the incidents or not react to them, or they can choose. In case if they have a separation of duties, SOC finds, make sure it's hard evidence, it's not false positive, it's positive, and makes an incident about that, puts a mark on it, is it critical, high, and whatever, depends on which framework we use. And you get a ticket, you have to react, you have to do. In some cases, SOCs also have actionable capability in that sense. They can shut down the network. They have a kill switch. They can operate the kill switch, which means that they can cut the network to a specific kind of, segment. Depends how the management really gives the responsibility to SOCs. It's up to the management to decide. In the traditional way, we see a lot of horizontal movement. You have to tell me, I have to tell the board, and we have to decide. In an incident situation, it means like our higher you go, the longer the period in that sense. You end up in a full day, and incident-wise, if you have a malware which encrypts everything you have, then might be not your ERP system or might not be your document management system, it might be your whole system. So you can choose. The management can choose. It's good that you talked about CISOs. The misconception of the CISO is that he is the sheriff with the pump action rifle going around the corridor and shooting everything that looks like a cyber incident. No, CISO is a manager. It's a management level, C-level actually. That's what it meant actually by that. He has to be a person who makes sure that business is running securely. He's also responsible for business operations, not just his security operations. He needs to be in clear what are the business needs, requirements, and whatever and whenever he does something, he has to be in line with business. It's not just he going around and saying, wrong password. No, not his level actually, really not his level. So CISO is the one who has to talk with the C-level, C-suite, to get the required level of authority into the SOC. When and where SOC can decide upon what exactly. He's responsible for idle TV power off. And SOC, if it has the responsibility, it can do the decisive actions and can make your life easier. So from my perspective, being a CISO, I would prefer that in case of an incident, the SOC has enough authority that the incident won't spread, that the containment actions will be more or less like automatic. But you don't want to have very automatic stuff, otherwise false positive, automatic reaction, business dead, you lose millions. So you have to be really careful about that. Analytics and, prevention. So SOC is not just about reaction, it's also about analytics. So forensics, network analytics, file forensics, system forensics, software forensics, software analyze, software code review, all that stuff, they need to be competent in all those fields. Only by forensic analysis they can do the prevention. So they get new intel in, they go through the old stuff, they have automated tools for that if they have, hope they have, and they constantly do the analysis of last, I don't know, a year data, or depends how much. The problem with SOC is more data they have, the longer it takes to analyze everything. And your forensics guys tend to be really slow, but it's preferable at least to keep 1 year logs to do a, post-mortem analysis of previous cases, incidents, maybe something that was false positive, was not fully addressed, and so on. So that's something you should have in a SOC, is an analytical capability. Of course, raising the awareness and keeping the company in loop. So SOC as such, I wouldn't say that SOC specifically is responsible for keeping up the awareness, because it depends. In my case, I have a special division or team available who works for the awareness part. So I have a teacher who is from background-wise a teacher, myself, for example, more or less. And then another person who is also has a pedagogical background. So it's better to use pedagogical background people who use the instruments to get to the hearts and minds. But SOC what does is SOC provides the use cases. Very, detailed use cases, what happened, how happened, and so on and so forth. And the teaching part, you can use that knowledge to raise awareness for all the employees. And it also, having a direct communication with the workers and having a direct kind of line to the people makes your life easier. You are not an outsider. Because usually what happens with SOC is they're seen like the hard police with the pump action gun, and they're outsiders usually. You don't want to that. Only way to mitigate that is through communication and then being available all the time. SOC importance in that sense. Why is SOC important? It's a philosophical question, more or less. Depends what your business does. Business main goal is what? Business main goal is to make business, to earn money in the end. Business is owned by someone, the someone wants to make money. And having a SOC really depends on how the SOC is described, how the SOC is brought on board, in which phase, how knowledgeable the management is about SOC operations. Is the SOC described from the perspective of, opportunities, not from the perspective of cost and, additional weight on the company, which they have to keep up. So one thing to do that is to emphasize the benefits that SOC as a unit brings. And also, you have to understand that there's big difference between compliance security and security. So compliance in general is what we look for in all the cases usually. ISO 27001, in Estonian case AITS, SOC Type 2 in UK, several different frameworks. Compliance security is not security. Compliance is something you show to your clients that we did some effort. And in legal means, we are more or less compliant to the law, or according to the framework at least, we have done some due care and due diligence. But it doesn't mean that you are secure. Compliance problem is that it doesn't give you the details. If compliance requirement, for example, is you having a password, is password secure? Depends on the situation. In some cases, yes. How it's implemented, how long it is, what additional features are included, how the password is kept, is password hashed and salted, where is it situated, how it's transferred, all that details. None of those compliance frameworks give you that detail, usually, not in that level. So security and compliance is not the same. And SOC is not actually so much worried about compliance. It's more about worried about real security. It's about constant monitoring and reaction. So today we have an option. We have the SOAR capability. We can automate to a certain level. But to be honest, nothing out of the box, and I mean really nothing out of the box, works without human intervention. There's nothing like that on the world. Doesn't even AI doesn't solve your issues. Really depends. If you have very easygoing stuff, maybe. If you don't, if you're not responsible for human lives, you are not running a critical business, maybe you can do a full automation. But if you are responsible for human lives, there's no legal or no lawyer voting, yes, you can go for the full automation, you don't need your human intervention. No, you can. That's the reason why we don't have full self-driving cars. So you need to have something as a person who keeps a look on your system 24/7, 365 days a year, constantly. And only that person, usually in critical moments, has to say, yes, no, go, no, stop, and so on. Centralized management. It's preferable, and the reason is very simple. A big company, do you want to have 10 SOCs or 1 SOC? If you have more than 3, then they will start to compete with each other. You can play a democratic part, but I'm not a big democracy believer in critical decisions. It doesn't add up, it doesn't compute really actually. In critical decisions, it's time that matters, not like how many votes against and how many votes for. So it has to be really very, very clear and very specific. So it has to be centralized. All information needs to come into a SOC. Is it either a log management capability and then from there to SIEM? It really depends what you incorporate into SOC. SOC is not something specific. It's not very standard in that sense. You can have physical security events showing up in SOC logs or SOC incident management systems. You can have all kinds of incidents accumulating in one incident management system and can be reasonable in that sense. For example, if you're doing an electricity or ISP, then you have several locations all over the Estonians. There are physical security features you need to monitor because you can do the best you want in your logical plane in that sense. You can do the IT and use IDSs and all the fancy buzzwords going around the security. But in the end, it's just a guy with the USB thumbstick and comes into your system and you're okay, maybe I can use some fancy stuff that stops that. But then you have legacy, where you can't employ very fancy stuff anymore. And it's still one guy with the thumbsticks coming on. So that's why the Stuxnet happened. It was cut-off system, but it still happened. If an adversary wants to come, he comes. It means that the SOC as such, if possible, include also physical security details. If it's related to, I don't know, connection points, system, I don't know, nodes or whatever. So would be preferable to have that kind of data in the SOC also, at least to look at it, to do an in-depth criminalistic analysis. Qualified personnel, the black belts of networking, the black belts of whatever in IT. I have to say that this is the most crucial part, actually. It doesn't, no, not today. This is the most crucial part. As I said, nothing, literally nothing works out of the box. You cannot take a software, put it in a computer and just like, let's magic happen. It doesn't happen. You don't have a CDMB. You don't have asset management, nothing if people are not involved. You can do the best SOC, but when the Microsoft team sucks, sorry for my French, or the Linux team sucks, they can undo everything you do in mere seconds. So the SOC team has to understand networking, platform, forensics, software development, all that. If SOC team doesn't get that, they're screwed. So easy. So they have to be literally the black belts who take care of your information system security. How many you have, that's a different story. My practical take on that is that taking people out of the school doesn't make them SOC operators. Sending a person to hacking essentials course or advanced hacking essentials course or whatever courses or web application security course or hunt the hacker course or whatever course, doesn't really matter. Doesn't make them a SOC operator. Period. Doesn't. SOC operator gets to that level through experience. He has to experience being an admin in a system. He has to experience being help desk operator. He has to be experienced in software development. He has to know how it sucks to be an administrator, how it sucks to be a help desk operator. He has to know that. He has to know what are the painful parts of those jobs. He has to know how to approach an admin guy. He has to know how to approach the IT help desk guy. He has to be able to relate to that. So preferably a SOC operator or person who works in SOC knows networking, platform, software development, has laid hands on those parts, has worked on those positions. Then he can relate, then he knows where to ask, where poke around, and so on. And then you can send to him to the fancy courses about WAS and whatever they are, NIS and so on. Proactive approach in that sense. SOC is not just waiting, not sitting in his hands and waiting when the CM starts to yell and the alerts start and then they start to react. No. SOC is not that functionality. If there is such a SOC, it's not a SOC in that sense. SOC is also responsible for doing constant analysis, research. They have to look through systems. They have to keep their eye on the system. They have to understand that in the system they have Windows 1000, I don't know, whatever, Linux, different variation of Linux, different operation systems. They have constantly monitor everything and they have to analyze that. They have to be aware what's going on. It doesn't just stop that I'm waiting for the CM to start to yell. A good SOC is that one that looks at the asset management, looks at the software, looks what's going on in the organization to that level that they are aware about procurements, new soon to come live to software solutions. So they're on top of the game. How they manage that, that's a different story, but they have to be active all the time, not passive, not waiting. They have to poke around. They have to hack or hunt the hacker in that sense in the system also. They have to deploy honeypots, honey nets, honey whatever to catch something. And there are also a bunch of solutions for that, different honey solutions. I think ByteLife can also find those for you if you need. Compliance, following the compliance. Besides, yes, compliance security is different than real security, but SOC as such has to follow compliance anyhow. So they have to make sure, besides the security, they have to make sure that you are compliant. And they do that through being knowledgeable. They also know the regulation. They have to know the NIS2. They have to know CES. They have to know all those different European fancy different regulations. There's many. There's literally many. And you're really in bad situation if your company is globally active. I have one company, Latin America, USA, Canada, UK, Germany, Middle East, bunch of different regulations. And you have to manage all around those regulations all the time to know that you're compliant. They have to know, for example, if it's okay to take data out of one system in one state. Is it allowed to import or export any data from there? Or they have to go on site, or they have to do remotely on site. So they have to know exactly what they can and cannot do. Components, functions, overview. So components, there are many actually. SOC is like, I'll say, endless backpack you can grab in and grab something. All stuff that, in that sense, everything that helps you and your system to be secure is okay. So SOC actually, being a black belt from operational side, people being able to operate, being able to run, being able to cope in different situations, means that they can use literally everything for their advantage. Whatever gives them an advantage to provide security, they will use, should use. There should not be a limit. There are several main components, functions, that all are orchestrated. So, of course, we talked about EDR, XDR, NDR, CM, Those are technical solutions that can support you. Besides that, there's a log aggregation, log filtering, log analytics stuff. There is code review systems, solutions. You can integrate them all. You can use fancy stuff, basically. Just Google, you find everything for something. There is always something for someone. But besides that, there is also procedure. One of the main things that the SOC has to have is blue books, playbooks, different procedures for different situations. Why? It's time. Time is most important for SOC. If an incident comes in, you have to have a well-oiled, well-orchestrated system and people and processes to go through the incident management process. It has to be really played out very well, as good as possible. As a military, I have to say, previous military, I have to say, every plan works until the first shot is fired and then everything goes to hell. You have to have, like as I said, you have to employ different solutions to monitor. So not networking, logs, system, operation systems, even people, behavioral analytics, everything that. Incident management processes, how you manage incidents, how you classify incidents, how you delegate incidents. There's lots of different ways you can handle incident, how you contain everything, what are the criteria. Then there are also business requirements come in. Are you allowed to do a containment? Does it have an impact on business? How many millions we are losing? Can we rely on the, for example, insurance? Should we close it? Should we not? At some point, some decisions are business decisions. And then that's where CISO comes in and has to go, like, okay, those are billions, not today, we have to run it. Let's take the risk. Then they have to go to the board and board says, we take the risk because we are talking about billions here. But how the process is built up, based on what principles, it's not one golden rule there how to do that. Because you have to always count in that what business you are in and what are the business requirements. Threat analytics and threat intel. It's a very hot topic in that sense at the moment. Stuff going on in Ukraine, China being active in their own specific area. It comes in that sense that you have to understand in which kind of domain you're operating. If you are a global company and you have Asian market and then US or over the Atlantic some markets and you have Middle East market, there are different threat actors active in those areas. So you cannot assess that, okay, I'm in Estonia, my main threat actor here is APT 28 and 29, which are Sandworm and whoever the Russian ones are here. And those are main actors and we take care. If you're a global company, your main effort or crown jewels are here in Estonia, but you operate all over the world. You have to count in APT 44, different APTs around Asian space and so on. So you have to count those also in. So you cannot take the MITRE ATT&CK matrix and then find Estonia. No, if you're all over the world, then I'm really sad for you, but you have to look at the whole matrix, not just 16 possible indicators you think that are valuable in Estonia. No, not really. You have to do analytics. You have to know exactly what you're looking for. Also depends which market you are operating. Is it the medical market? Is it the banking sector? Is it an energy sector? It has differences. You should be really aware what, where, what, and how exactly. Reaction and business continuity. How you, one responsibility of SOC, usually SOC, as I say, I don't like SOC being just a monitoring capability. Or it can be in that sense also, but SOC has to know how the business continuity is planned. Where are the backups? How it's all built up. They have to monitor in that sense that business knows where they are. I have had several cases where business doesn't know where the backups are. And then the worst case is that the backups are in the same system that was encrypted. That's best value for the money, I would say. So they have to be aware where are the systems that are backed up, where the backups are kept, so they can make sure that the backups are usable They are not using themselves, but the IT department probably wants to use them, but they have to be also secure those backups. Because latest attacks means that dependent on your backup solution, the backups are poisoned. You can come up again, in Ukraine case was 6 months, if I'm not mistaken. They had foothold in the system, 6-month period. It can be even longer. There are cases where 1 year there was a presence in the system, maybe longer. But at least that's the moment when they're found out, which means that you have to be really careful about your backups. You can kill that, throw them out, restore, they're back in. Business starts from zero again. Communication again. And collaboration and communication. In Estonian case, I would say the best case was 2007. I'm not talking about the cyber war, I really don't care about that so much. It was in that sense contained more or less in Estonia, but the best that came out in Estonia is the community-based approach to security, the collaboration part. It's like there was one chat, a guy shouted out and everybody answered. Communication saved us from the worst in that case, and it still is in that sense. In Estonian case, I have to say that being so small has a really good perk in that sense. We know each other. I know several people here in that room. We know each other. We can shout out. We can find the responsible person who knows how the stuff is done, where the backups are. It really works, but the basis of that is the communication. Enable that communication and collaboration. But it's easy to say for Estonians, let's go over to Germany. We have 80 billion people. I don't know how many bandus, kind of regional, different kind of units. And then there's different story. In US, the same, more or less. And Europe is a whole different story. We don't speak same language in Spain, for example. They don't speak Estonian for whatever reason. There are lots of Estonians there, actually. But yeah. That's how it is. There's a language barrier, there's a cultural barrier, there's lots of barriers, and the communication doesn't work like that. And there's also abundance of different organizations. Me being here today means that I'm not over in another organizational meeting today, which is European Cyber and Information Systems, whatever the organization was called. But it shows that there are so many different organizations in Europe, and I don't have the time to participate in all those events. And I need to pay for everyone, like, for you. And then you get the MISP solution. Everybody inserts their data into the MISP, and then you have lots of noise. Good luck cleaning that. Business-wise, how can be a SOC valuable for a business? In layman's terms, in that sense, it can enable a business through finding and neutralizing incidents before they happen. They can contain the event so that the business is able to run and keep up the business as it is. But it's usually the issue with that is that yeah, we haven't had anything really, and nothing has happened so far. And why do we need to spend the extra money for the SOC and personnel and training and everything like that? It's a business decision. The honest answer is it's a business decision. And usually the decision is really fast after they have had an incident where everything was encrypted. There's no questions asked anymore. So it's either you understand what the SOC does and what it is meant for, or you can also additionally utilize the SOC for your compliance. So you can emphasize, you can actually punch up the sales numbers by saying and showing that we are secure, that we have a security, we have the best security, we have the black belts. You're a trustworthy business partner. It can be of importance if you are on the market, so IPO-wise and stuff like that. So it can boost your shares. It can be important. Trustworthy as a talk test. Business processes, providing that the business is running constantly all the time. In that sense, we can also say that SOC is like 24/7 help desk on steroids. And I don't mean just steroids, it's ultra steroids in that sense. They see everything. Anyone, everyone, everything. It's better than the help desk, they're faster, and they probably know much earlier what goes on than the help desk. Strong SOC means that if you are emphasizing that, if you are visible with that SOC, if you go out with that SOC, if it's part of a community, everybody knows, it's easy to say in Estonia at least, everybody knows that you have the top-notch security, you have the black belts, they run your business, and if you're providing, I don't know, services, then everybody knows that those are trustworthy services. You don't want to be a security company who doesn't really meet the security standards. Like, it's a very terrible solution in that sense. You can be hacked and then it's not secure, so business is over. Cutting down cost. It is actually an operational SOC is expensive. There's a while ago I did a paper on that, how big should be a SOC. Also was participating in Sun's SOC course a while ago. This is 25 is standard. But actually, if you have all those elements, the bare minimum to cover all the functionalities is minimum 35 people operational. I'm not talking about 24/7 all, but 35 to cover all the functions is the minimum amount. 35 black belts in networking, in software development, in platform, those black belts are really expensive. So you need to understand how you handle them, where do you get them, how you keep them. Because having a person is not just one cost. Losing that person is even bigger cost, because you have to hire a new one, you have to take time to train him. If you have a solution he is not familiar, it takes about a year in worst case scenario, at least 6 months. If it goes, it's bad. It's more expensive. So you have to make sure that you get those guys, you train those guys, you keep those guys. And the SOC guys usually are very prone to burn through in that sense. So you have to make them also, or provide them also a certain level of entertainment. You just don't make sure that you don't kill them. It's very easy to kill them. One 24 event or 24/7 event or several in military, it's okay, that's my backpack, that's my tent, 4 hours of sleep, next guy. Most of you haven't done that. And if you are in that situation like today, 24/7 for the next 2 weeks, at some point you say, come on guys, no, that's not what I signed up for. Even if with that salary, I don't really know. So you have to be sure that if you hire the team, you maintain them is the good word for that. You send them somewhere far away, make sure that they have enough leisure time, and it's cheaper in the end, it just is. But how they cut costs, it's a tricky part in that sense. You can employ SOC in different ways. You can employ SOC also as your system optimators. I have in my SOC team software guys who can look at different software and say, this software piece is not optimized for that use case. This software piece linked with that software piece, there is like overlap, and so this is not optimal. They can go through those also, and it keeps them sharp actually. They also can go over different platforms, networks, constantly going over those and say, this rule is bad, this link is not okay. And you can use them as technical audits, you can say it that way. You can use that for that purpose, and they help you keep your cost under control. Because they see in a system, for example, you have endless amount of VMs in Azure environment, which you pay a lot of money, and developers want to have features like logging all the time, and then you see that your virtual storage is full, and you get like 4 times higher bill than usually, and then it's like, okay, but SOC guys are usually on top of that game. They see that what goes on, and you can use that for that purpose. And also looking at the fines, NIS2, 40 million for IT system, whatever incident brings you down and has some not desired effects on your critical infrastructure or whatever, 40 million maximum. If you're in Estonia, maybe not so bad, but the fines tend to be low here, if at all. But if you are a global business, nobody cares. In Germany, Facebook, GDPR, okay, those are GDPR compliance related, but still Facebook, the amount of money they paid for fines is unimaginable. In Estonia, one company would go bankrupt in a second after the decision. So if the NIS is enforced 2025, 16th December, you have to be compliant. If you're not, and you're a globally actionable company, and you have several smaller offices in Europe, and there is some incident with you, I guarantee that you go bankrupt probably. Because maybe in Estonia we have some, okay, you're an Estonian company, but the Germans don't care. It's a busy market there. So they can help cut those costs. Also related to GDPR, actually. GDPR is also compliance. GDPR is heavily reliant on technical solutions like data protection or data loss prevention systems and so on and so forth. So SOC can help in GDPR compliance also. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you,
Questions?
Ugo. Do we have questions for him? All clear?
So switched over to English. Sorry for that. I'm doing my own SOC. In 1 year in office now it's 15 people. But it's foreseen 28 souls in that SOC. At the moment I have 15, but the roadmap is 28. Okay, full-time, yes. So the reason why I do my own SOC is that energy companies really, in European space, we have lots of companies who are divided into smaller pieces. Everyone has their own responsibility. In Estonia, historically, we had one company. One big company did all. Production, dissemination, big, small, green energy, metalworks, mining operations, everything related to that. Even real estate, if you want so. And having 6,000 people working for you, managing all that, it used to be even more. Managing all that and IT systems in an environment when you have systems from the 50s, the 1950s, which are more or less automated, and then systems which are 2024, when we are talking about the controllers that want to speak to the cloud. So you have everything. Users from 18 to 80. So you have to cover it all. Having a SOC that is enabled to do that, not so feasible in that sense. In that sense, considering the endpoints, the amount of endpoints, the possible endless amounts of false positives, the whole hassle between those legacy systems, it just takes so much time to bring on a company, and it will cost hell lot of money. Because they have to pay someone for the work. They have to have people also on their payroll. Such a huge company like Estonian Energy, it's much more feasible to have its own internal SOC than buy-in service. That's how it is. Smaller companies, if you don't want to spend on the hassle, if you don't want to invest into the system, SIEM is an investment. It's not just you buy one and you forget it. None of the systems are. You have to keep up. You have to keep up the hardware, the software. You have to have an operator. You have to have analytics. It's constant hassle. It doesn't function like that. So if you don't want to do that hassle or take care of that, then it's easier to buy, I would say, small to medium-sized companies, definitely. Big companies dependent on what business they are in. So in our case, energy companies in Europe, eastern part of Europe, being in the situation where you have war in Ukraine, there's a huge responsibility. And I'm not sure that the companies who provide SOC, they will do the same level that we do on-site. So
Okay, do we have more or? Yeah.
How's the hiring here? How easy or difficult is it to hire people for the SOC and maybe continue staffing the night shift?
very good question. Staffing the night shift, that starts from the legal framework you have in Estonia. So what are the conditions to have the night shift? Night shift wise, you probably need to have at least 24/7 operation means that that position needs to have 5 people in one position at least, because you have vacations, functions, and in 24 you have how many 8-hour cycles? Okay. So you have to have a spare, you have to count in. So every position, so SOC, the night shift, at least 2, depends on the size, system, depends on the automation level, everything, but at least 2, because one needs to go to the toilet. And they should never go together. So maybe 3 people in one 24/7 operational cycle need to be present all the time. Hiring, also, as I said, black belts. How many black belts? You are from Finland? Sweden, okay, close by. So how many black belts you have? Same here. The rough estimation is 1 to 6. So 1 black belt versus 6, maybe it's even worse. Not so black belts, soft power in that sense. If you are hiring, then you have 1 to 6 ratio, more or less. So you want to hire 1 guy, you have 60 candidates, 10 potentials, and 1 guy that makes it. Then you have to calculate in 60 people. The cost of hiring is so high today, actually. You spend like, for 1 position, you spend roughly 7,000–8,000 euros work hours wise. The HR has to do that. But 60 people equals 60 hours of talking, analyzing. Not talking, just talking, then analyzing, going through that is hellish in that sense. It's not good. What I do in that sense, I have done in the defense forces, and some of the guys who know, I go to the universities. I make sure that I find that potential. He knows how to play with Legos. He knows how to think logically. In Estonia, we have the different cyber events going on over the years. When I was running the cyber range, you find the potential. You don't look for the black belt. You train the black belt yourself. That's the only way to do it. And then also you have to have situations where didn't make it, didn't have enough water. Next one. You have to count in. It's a trial and error. It's not so bad about hiring and training them. It's the worst is keeping them. That's the worst part. You have to make sure that they don't end up being divas. And they know what their job is, but you have to make their job as much comfortable as possible so they don't leave you. Because if they leave you, 6 months salary, new guy hiring, it's about 20,000 or more euros. Just if 1 guy leaves, if you add compensation and whatever cost, then on top of that, finding a new guy when he starts to be operational, it's around, I would say, 20,000–30,000 euros when he's more or less actionable. If it's a potential guy who worked for you 7 years, the sum is even bigger. You have to train him. And then I have had in defense forces, the worst case, you can hear from experienced HR officer is like, there are no people who are not, how you say, replaceable. There are no replaceable people. Really? I spent 100,000 euros for a forensic guy. Because forensics is very competitive in that sense. Everyone wants them. It's very tough area. You find only those very mathematical brains who are able to do the analytics. You spend lots of money on that. And if he says, there are no replaceable people, it's like, they are, actually, if you are a businessman. But if you're not a businessman, yeah, you can talk like that. It's like 1 shot of the bazooka, 1,000, okay. Maybe, but in reality, it's not like that. It takes hellish time to find these people, hellish time to train them, and extra effort to keep them. It's not easy. And I'm almost like begging, like, please don't go. Whatever you need. And then you step to the board, and as a CISO, you have the work to keep the SOC running, keep the people in the SOC, make sure that business understands, make sure that you understand the business. This is not an easy job. That's also why the burnout of CISOs is like after 3 years, no questions. The sheer amount of responsibility you get is not just the task, it's keeping the people, keeping the team, everything. But some cases, CISOs, as you said, are the pump action guys. Like one guy in the business goes around, that's easy CISO job. The worst is if you have a team, 35 people, maintaining them. And then your CISO job is not just a CISO job anymore, then it's father, mother, grandfather, and so on and so forth. So you have to make sure that they are there, they stay there, and you still will lose some. So you have to have some backups. Not easy, not cheap.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So thank you for everyone who has been here, who has been in online, found the time today. I hope this subject has been interesting for all of you. If you have more questions, please don't hesitate to ask ByteLife cybersecurity team. We are always here to help you. So have a great lunch and see you next time.